I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
It is the weekend, finally. Happy Saturday, everyone, no matter where you are in the world. I'm glad everybody made it through another week, and we have some racing for you on this Saturday afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you guys are in the world. This is week 7 of Formula V's. This is the first time I've been on the call here. In the booth with me is Ron. Gonna get it wrong, Ron. Maunz. I think I may have gotten it right.
There you go.
There we go. We got Ron Maunz in the booth with me. Super excited, Ron. We're at Laguna Seca in the Formula V's. Had an anonymous sponsor come in and was able to do some things here. So I'm super excited. What do you think? You ready for this one?
Oh, I am super pumped up. I'm already amped up after doing a broadcast earlier on today, but really excited to get things up and rolling for round number 7 of this season of the Formula V Weekend Warriors season. You know, we covered a race not very long ago. I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, if I remember correctly, at Summit Point. And Summit Point, another classic American road course that's usually a fixture here in the Ray Esports series. The Formula V's always put on a very good show. Slipstream heavy cars going to play a big role, especially careening their way down into the Andretti hairpin throughout the 30 minutes of racing action that we have coming up in the not too distant future. But this track is a classic. Everyone loves Laguna Seca. Well, everyone doesn't love Laguna Seca. Everyone knows Laguna Seca. Some people kind of have some mixed opinions about the track. Personally, I love it. I am a fan of watching racing around this track, regardless of what kind of series it is, whether it be IndyCar, whether it be IMSA, or whether it be here with the Formula V's. Laguna Seca always puts on a show, and I have a feeling that today is going to be no different. Alrighty, let's do that. We're still in this practice session, have about 7-ish minutes left to go. We'll call it 7.5 left in this practice session. Let's ride on board with Matt Zerbrez. I probably butchered that pronunciation. We'll follow someone throughout this lap. Laguna Seca Classic. There are many Formula Vee races that are held here in real life and, of course, in the sim as well. We're going to start by talking about this final corner. You can see interesting line heading into it. Then it's really important to get a good exit going on to this start-finish straightaway. These Formula V's don't have a boatload of power. They can hit about 100 miles an hour with the wind at their backs, so it's really critical on getting a good exit and going down this start-finish straightaway, keeping close to that inside line and nearly hitting the cones separating the racetrack from the pit lane. Then you try and use as much of the asphalt at your disposal and go for a spin heading through turn number 1. Hopefully these drivers don't try and replicate that spin that Parvinder Ladar just had in the Ford's 32 car. And let's try this one more time. Brian Hansen in the 771. This may be a commentator's jinx, possibly. I'm not too sure, Adam. Having a spin riding on board with the driver heading into turn 1. Alrighty, there we go. Coming out of Andretti Hairpin, which is actually turn number 2 because they label that small little kink down the start-finish straightaway as turn 1 because of people on motorcycles. Now we head through 3, a tough corner. Gonna see a lot of drivers possibly run wide through there. Here's a corner that I feel like I can never get right. It's turn number 5. Feels like it tightens up a whole lot on corner exit. Really difficult to try and keep it out of the grass. Well, actually, the dirt and the gravel on the outside of this track. You can see Hansen using all the curb at his disposal to widen the run through turn number 5 as much as he possibly can. Now we're heading into, I think, one of the other challenging spots on this lap. Turn number 6, be very careful to avoid that red killer curb on the inside line. You hit that in whatever race car you're driving around this track, then you're going to be in for a world of hurt. Down the Rahal straightaway, about to careen your way into one of the most iconic corners in all of American motorsports, the corkscrew, a massive drop in these cars. You can actually hear it a little bit from Brian Hansen just listening to the engine notes. It gets a little bit high up in the RPM going over the corkscrew, then dealing with rainy curve of turn number 9, tough corner to try and get right. Turn 10 as well, very similar to turn number 4 earlier on in the lap, trying to avoid the outside curb or the gravel as well, and that will complete the lap as we see Hansen head his way into pit entry. Thankfully for the Formula Vee series, unlike the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords that are also covered here on slow motion broadcasting, don't have to worry about pit stops. It is just 30 minutes of hard racing action, and I think that may be a blessing because even in real life, drivers have been caught out by that pit entry over the years.
Oh, 100%, and especially, let's talk about this real quick. We got about 5 minutes left in practice. I don't know these Formula V's that well. They came out a little bit after I was done with my rookies, and I'm more of a fendered wheel driver anyways. I'm a big GT3 nut, NASCAR guy, all kinds of stuff like that. So how is tire wear? How's tire heat going to be in these cars over 30 minutes, Ron?
Well, tire wear, I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem because considering that Formula Vee is just about the cheapest form of racing that you can get in if you want to get in something outside of a go-kart, the tires are usually a bit stronger than you may suspect. I don't think tire wear is going to be too much of an issue, even with some of the track conditions that some of these drivers may be facing. I'll take a look at the weather tab in iRacing to see exactly how the track temperatures are. This is pretty insane. It shows you how strong the sun is in the state of California. It's currently clear. The ambient temperature in sim is 66 degrees Fahrenheit. The track temperature is at a blistering 120 degrees with about a 2-mile-an-hour wind. Still air, hot air. Well, actually, it's not even hot air. It's somewhat cold air. However, it is heating up the track quite a lot. And I have a feeling that even with the hot track conditions that these drivers are going to have to deal with, I don't think we're going to see tire wear be too much of a problem. Knowing my luck, though, I may have just jinxed it.
Well, let's hope not, and let's hope we don't jinx anything else. We were talking before we got on air here. Corkscrew in these cars and the FVs have... it seems like they've had a couple issues, at least from the last time you commentated on one of these races. You said a few FVs ended up on top of each other going through there.
And the worst part is some parts of this track don't even have a catch fence on the outside of it. Like you can see there on the inside of the track heading through the under the Firestone Bridge coming out of turn number 3. There's a small little bit of this racetrack where there's no real protection. You can ballpark it. I have seen, I'm trying to harken back and go through some of the last broadcasts that I've done. And I think over the past, I'm trying to think now, over the past like week and 2 days, we'll call it, I have seen 2 different race cars from 2 entirely different series end up over the fence and in the parking lot, and fingers crossed that we don't see a Formula Vee end up in a similar scenario to that. However, considering how hard these drivers race week in and week out and how respectful it is as well, all these drivers know each other. It's a nice little community that we have here in the Weekend Warriors side of things here on iRacing. But even with that being said, these drivers are still going to race each other hard over halfway through the season now, so these drivers are going to eye up, trying to get some points over their adversaries and trying to find any sort of way they can to best one another. I would not be too shocked if we have one ballparker. What do you think, Adam?
I think we probably might have one ballparker. I mean, especially in the S2, like we mentioned, that is a very close battle at the top of the leaderboard. So, like you said, we're halfway through this season. People are going to have to start getting a little bit more aggressive, trying to steal some points off. And, again, points aren't broken up into different classes. You do have class points. Both classes get those points, but everybody is grouped under one when they give points. So you're going to have S2 drivers trying to battle it out with S1 drivers to try to put some distance between themselves and their S2 rivals to get more points off of them. So it's going to be a great race and a great season, I think. I will go ahead and pull those points up again back when we get into qualifying. As we see someone going backwards in the background there, it's just practice. It doesn't matter, but let's hope we don't see some ballparkers. But, Ron, let's be honest. From the commentary side, it's always pretty cool to see some good wrecks, as long as everyone's safe. And this is a virtual side of things, so everyone should be safe unless they've got their force feedback turned up too high.
As we have another spinner, that was very comedic timing. That was, I'm not sure who that was going for a spin into the gravel trap on the outside of turn number 5. Thankfully, they got away with that without hitting the wall. I have seen many a strange wreck. I'm trying to think of, we may need to come back to this discussion of some of the strangest wrecks that we've ever seen broadcasting. We've definitely seen our fair share of weird stuff, that is for darn sure. I don't think weird stuff is going to be the name of the game for this race. I think it's just going to be some hard racing. And looking through the practice times, of course, it may be a little bit unrepresentative as to what we will expect in this qualifying session coming up that's going to be starting in just a few moments' time. A single car qualifying session, might I add, where all the drivers are on track by themselves and have 4 laps to try and get the job done. But just based off the practice results, pretty close up and down the field. The highest gap really is for Baudoin, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, running in 23rd in this practice session. He was about 0.6 of a second off of Mel right in front and 4 seconds off of the fastest time in practice, which ends up being Zerbez. And I think now we have the checkered flag out in this practice session, so we will be switching over to that qualifying session, solo qualifying session, in just a few moments' time.
Yeah, and here we go. Drivers already out on track. We've got Mr. Dan. I'm not even going to try, Dan. For this broadcast, your name is Dan.
Stasinski.
Stasinski. There we go. Good enough. Thor Tulo out on track as well. See who we've got here. You know what? Because you've covered these guys or these drivers more than I have, give me your predictions here. Who do you think is going to be fast in qualifying? Who do you think that can take this thing?
Ooh, that is a very tough question you ask me, Adam. And, I mean, just based off the practice results, there's some drivers that you definitely have to keep our eyes on. Josh Justice is a very fast race car driver. He runs Spec Racer forwards with the STCA in real life, is a fixture in pretty much all of the Weekend Warriors series of Formula V's, being no exception. Gotta keep your eyes on some of the drivers that are a little bit more involved in this series than other. Jim Brewster in the 133 car, he's one of the series admins, so he usually puts on a pretty good show week in and week out, getting a whole lot of practice during the week before these races. Thortulo as well, another fast race car driver. I've seen him win in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors series in the past on another broadcaster that we will not mention by name. Daniel Stasinski as well. I should point out that I have commentated over, I think it may be his brother. Actually, no. Daniel, I can remember the old numbering. I'm trying to figure out the nomenclature to use here. The numbering standards here from Ray Esports series. I believe Daniel Stasinski may be Sir and Mr. Brian Straczynski's father, possibly?
Okay.
Father, brother, I'm not too sure. I've commentated over Brian running in the Ray Esports series in the past, which, who knows, maybe we will see that make our turn at slow motion in the not too distant future. But they're pretty fast in real life. They run some races with the SCCA. So there's just looking up and down the running order. I know I sound like a little bit of a skipping record here, but just a lot of these drivers are very fast. Jeff Jacobson, the 40 car, he's usually a force to be reckoned with. Jesus Rodriguez, he is very quick. Michelle Lynn used to drive Formula V's many moons ago in real life. She has some experience from that end as well. There's just a whole lot of driver. I guess in terms of picking my favorite for pole, I guess I would probably have to go with the man that led that practice session earlier, that being driver set that fastest time, Matt Zerbez.
Yep, we are on board here with Matt Zerbez right now. He just got through turns 1 and 2, heading up into 3 at the moment. We'll go ahead and see what he's doing right now. Thor Tulo on a purple. You're going to see a lot of purple sectors down here on the bottom side until people start finishing laps. But right now, this is Matt Zerbez. So watch at the bottom side of the timing or of your screen to see what Matt does on his first lap. Again, my goodness, 4 laps, 15 minutes. So these drivers are going to be able to complete all 4 laps within that 15-minute time frame. And let's talk about that real quick before things get really hotted up here in qualifying. Ron, are you going to... So first lap, probably not going to be as good. You got to get those tires up to working temp for sure. And also fuel. As the fuel comes out of the car, these things must get faster because they're so light.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Adam. The thing with these cars is they're pretty much oversized go-karts. I've had plenty of experience of driving go-karts in real life, and I feel like there's some 125cc shifter carts that produce a little bit less power than these Formula V's have, so not a whole lot of power at their disposal. So having a bit less weight as this qualifying session progresses is going to make a huge role, but with that as well, I've seen some drivers make this mistake in the past in all sorts of series, whether it be some high-up series run by big esports organizations, or whether it be a series like this, which is more grassroots and really awesome to watch as well, as Zerbez goes up to the top at a 141.439. You gotta wonder, on the other side of the coin, with drivers possibly taking fuel out of their race cars for this qualifying session, Zerbez already towing back, so very confident with that 1 lap time he's set. But with the yin of drivers being a bit light on fuel for this practice session, this qualifying session I should say, comes the yang of forgetting to put that fuel back into your race car. I've seen some drivers make that mistake. Who knows, we maybe could see it today.
Excuse me, yeah, we might be able to see that today. I can tell you, I have, being someone that has done that, it is the worst feeling when you get on the grid and your crew chief says, we do not have enough fuel to make it to the end, and you are in trouble. And at that point, it is just very disheartening. And some of these drivers up here that could be very fast, like Matt Zerbez, probably if he only did 1 lap, maybe put enough fuel in it for that 1 lap. So obviously, you got to be very careful with things like that. We'll see what happens on the grid. We have a pretty big grid this afternoon, looking at around 20-ish drivers, I believe. So, you know, turn 1 always going to be scary, especially in these things. There is absolutely no aero on these. I mean, you've seen some of the paint jobs for these cars, Ron. One of them are a pencil, an actual pencil, and that's what this car reminds me of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty accurate description. The only bit of aerodynamic features on these race cars are probably if a driver could flick up their visor while driving in the sim. Of course, they can't do that yet. I don't know, maybe iRacing will work on an update to add that in the not-too-distant future. But there's pretty much no aerodynamic features to these race cars. It is racing in its purest form. Pretty much all you have is a small little metal chassis, some bodywork on it, a paint scheme, 4 wheels, and a driver, and it puts on some pretty good shows. And it's putting on a good show in this qualifying session right now. 6 minutes on the board, about 8 left to go. Doing the math in my head, I probably got that wrong. I was never good at math class as a kid. Actually, okay, that would be 9 minutes left to go in the qualifying session. I knew I had flubbed the numbers somehow, but nevertheless, Zerbez still at the top of that 141.4, currently a half a second over Thor Tulo in P2. Alan DeGasse is very nicely played to slot him in 3rd as it stands at the moment, but some more drivers setting some qualifying lap times. Coming across the line is Fitzgerald. He jumps up to P6 at a 142.647. Currently 1.2 seconds off of our provisional pole sitter, that being Zerbez. But look at that pack between Marzucci and Fitzgerald, currently separated by 0.02 of a second.
Yeah, this is very, very close. And I want to mention what I'm starting to notice here. Parvinder Lidar, sitting right now in 8th position, was purple in his first 2 sectors, and he must have lost quite a bit of time, 3 yellows to finish out the lap. I think Zerbez must be extremely fast in those final 3 sectors for him to have a 0.3 of a second gap to second place right now. But if Parvinder, keep an eye out for him. If he goes back out, keep an eye out. I think he may have something for him, but right now it doesn't look like anybody's got anything for Zerbez, who's still sitting in the pits. Very, very confident.
Ooh, and some jumping going around a little bit farther behind Zerbez. Brewster briefly jumped his way back up to P3. However, DeGassis has jumped in front of him to slot his way on to that second row. And look at Ladar jumping up to 5th. We'll see if he slows down or if he's going to continue on with one more lap. We may have to stay on board with the driver of the 432 car. I may have jinxed him earlier on in that practice session as we were riding on board and we went for a spin, hang through turn number 1. But hey, you can tell that he is pushing that car to the absolute limit, currently just 0.8 of a second off of Zerbez, who still has the pole. If he can improve by just a half a second, he would jump his way from P5 all the way up to P2, which would be an incredible result for the driver of that 432 car. We'll see him heading through the midsection of the lap right now, about to careen his way into turn number 5. You can see one good thing I like about these cars, they don't really have very noticeable brake lights as he actually dips 2 wheels into the dirt coming at turn number 5. You can tell when they're off throttle, and you can tell when they're on their brakes just because you can see the front end of the nose, front nose of the car, I should say, dip down. So we're seeing the cookings of what could be a very good lap. Currently it's blocked a little bit by my track map. How is he looking this time by? Is Ladar improving?
I hope so. As of this moment, he hasn't popped out on the bottom side of the screen. He should very, very quickly here. Sector time should be coming in. It looks good. Don Parsons about to cross the line. Parvinder should be next. He seems to be still on the throttle, which means this must be a very good lap. We'll see here. Parvinder still nothing. Maybe he did have an off track or something because it's still not showing up, or he may be done. How many laps has he run? This will be his 3rd lap here. We'll see if he goes again. He hits the brakes before the start finish line. Again, 2 purples on the first 2 sectors, Ron.
Oh, that is going to sting for him, and I think that may be the end of his qualifying session. He's been out there multiple occasions, so I think that may be it. He has exhausted the 4 laps that he had at his disposal. I gotta wonder at this point, is there anyone that could possibly challenge Zerbez and Tulo, who are still occupying our provisional front row? Those two have pretty much entirely checked out, as you can see the 0.3 of a second gap between Zerbez and Tulo, and the 0.4 of a second gap between Tulo and DeGassis, as it looks like
keep an eye on Jason Grider here. 2 green sectors going through turn 6 now, excuse me, right now. So it's going to be interesting. See if he can get another sector green for the 3rd sector. He cannot. It looks like these first 2 sectors are much easier for these drivers. Getting into the final part of the lap run, they start to slow down.
I mean, it kind of makes sense too, considering how this section of the racetrack, you are turning a vast majority of the time. Outside of that Rahal straightaway, when you're really just mentally preparing yourself for having to go through the corkscrew, there's no rest for these cars. The tires start to feel the burn a little bit. They get way up into the temperature, and that could be the reason why some of these drivers are possibly struggling heading through the first 2 sectors, where it's a bit more flat out, especially at the beginning. We're having a good run coming out of that final corner where it can save you a whole lot of time. That could be the reason why some of these drivers are jumping up the running order and setting some good times. Grider does not improve. He sets a 144.562 to remain in P17. Not terribly far off his best time, it must be said. However, still not going to improve as he still remains in P17.
He does. Matthias Marin comes across the line now. Will he improve at all? Had a few good sectors. Absolutely nothing doing for Matthias. Jason on another one. Spencer Beaudoin, I think, on another one as well. Keep an eye out for these 2 drivers. Joshua Justice also on a flyer. Yellow 1st sector. Grider, yellow 2nd sector, as well as Spencer. I don't think anybody is going to get anything else out of these cars. Track temp, tire temp, something is going wrong for these drivers in the closing minutes of this qualifying session, and you can see why Matt Zerbes set that lap and went in. He was very confident, and now, looking at the times, he had a reason to be that way.
I'll tell you what, it's kind of reminding me of something. Ooh, as we have a nice slide from Marin. He keeps it going in a straight line. However, a small little checkup like that to try and keep yourself from spinning in most cars isn't going to affect you as much as it does in a Formula Vee. Getting back to the point I was going to mention about Zerbes and his qualifying performance, it reminds me very much of something I believe Sebastian Vettel did at the Singapore Grand Prix in 2013, I believe, trying to test my Formula 1 knowledge here. He just had one lap time in the final qualifying session and just kept it in the garage the rest of the day, and he still ended up grabbing poles. So maybe that's what Zerbes is trying to do, harken back to a Max Verstappen or Sebastian Vettel-esque move, because I think both of them did that. Ooh, as we have some drivers setting some good lap times, and Lador is back out on the circuit. Green in the first sector. How's he gonna do in the second one this time? By currently fifth in this qualifying session. Goes yellow again. And okay, this is okay, maybe a small little graphical error possibly. It says that he's currently on a lap time, which has taken him 3 minutes or something. So yeah, I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. So maybe Lador, well, we'll see what he can do in the final 2 sectors. He's still looking pretty quick, nearly going into the dirt, going up the right haul straightaway, trying to shave as much distance as you possibly can as he goes yellow in sector 3. So this is not looking very good for Lador. He is going to be the final driver in this qualifying session, as everyone else has gone their way back to pit lane. So Lador possibly trying to be the showstopper and set in a cooker towards the end of this qualifying session, rounding his way around the second to last corner of turn 10. He has to get the braking right of turn 11, kicked up some dust on the outside of turn 10, and rounding his way around the final turn. Will he get a good exit? Will he be able to possibly move up a spot or 2 or 5? Is it Lador on pole, or is he going to remain in 5th across the line? And I
don't quite know what happened there.
Yeah, something happened. I briefly saw 141, and I was like, wait, did he go on pole? I was like, man, I'm not really hyping this up as much as I should, but no, it's not an improvement from Lador. However, he gave it the old college try. That's the best thing we could say.
Absolutely, and that's one thing that people need to understand about this. We do the best we can with the software we have here on iRacing. Sometimes iRacing gives faulty software or faulty readings to the overlays, and just something that you've got to work out. And honestly, it happens in real life too, Ron. So I think we're going to be okay. But we have got Human right now on his final lap. We've got about 35, 36, 37, 20 seconds left in qualifying. He should be able to get this lap done, maybe, but keep forgetting these guys are in Formula V's.
Yeah, I think it's going to be borderline as to him setting another qualifying time. I don't think he'll be able to make it across the line to have another go in this qualifying session. So Morn Human is going to be the last driver on track in this 15-minute long solo qualifying session. The checkered flag is now out, and Binky gets abducted by a UFO to drag him back to pit lane. The South African driver not able to set a qualifying time, so I believe he's going to be starting on the last row. And speaking of, here's the starting grid. Thank you very much, Adam, for the quick work on the graphics. Matt Zerbes is going to be starting this race from the pole in the number 14 car. Thortulo going to join him on the front row. Alan Degas is going to start this race in 3rd. Jim Brewster in 4th. Parvinder Lador starting this race in 5th. Jesus Rodriguez in P6. Guido Marzucci in P number 7. David Fitzgerald in 8th. Jeff Jacobson in 9th. Brian Hansen will round out your top 10.
Have Michelle Lynn starting in 11th with Joshua Justice in 12th place. 13th is going to be Dan. Help me out here, Ron.
Stasinski.
That guy. Don Parsons starting in 14th. Gary Wolbolt 15th with Spencer Boudouin in 16th. I apologize. I'm very American and my accent flips out quite a bit. Matthias Marin starting in 17th with Jason Greider. 18th, Hank Mell in 19th with Nick Tulo. Rounding out your top 20, the bottom 3, Wayne Buttermore, Morn Human, and JVC is fun. Starting in 23rd, JVC is way back there. I know he's got more pace than that, so keep an eye on him for this race.
I think he may have decided to have a whole lot of fun this race, start at the back and try and cut his way through the field like a hot knife through butter, and we'll just have to wait and see if he can get that job done. You mentioned it earlier, Adam, that Andretti hairpin of turn 2, really, I'm split on whether we should call it turn 2 or turn 1. It's technically turn number 2, however, it's the first real challenging corner for these drivers to try and deal with. Either way, it's going to be quite hectic at the very start of this race. 23 Formula V's, all of which they can't really take evasive action too much. They just need it's a momentum game. You know, the Summer Olympics are going on, so there's a fantastic time to mention a Winter Olympics reference. But whenever you hear something about, like, bobsled or something like that, they always say, like, oh yeah, if we lose 1/10 of a second in the first sector at the top of the hill, by the time we get to the bomb, that's like a 1.5 time lost. So really, in these Formula V's, you can kind of draw a little bit of a comparison.
Well, you can draw a massive comparison, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I never thought these things look like bobsleds too, and they act like bobsleds. You are on point, Ron, with your references today. We are about to go green, though. Short pace lap here, Ron. I'm going to hand it over to you for the start of this race.
Alrighty, sounds good. Thank you very much, Adam. The field is on their way. You can see that pace car has already made the turn. I won't make the mistake that I made last time when I called a race here at Laguna Seca, and I said it was a Porsche pace car when it ended up being a Ford. It is a Porsche pace car. That Porsche pace car is in pit lane, and we're getting the green here, and the drivers are going to be on their way. The smoke going up in the air from all these drivers banging their way through the gears. It's going to be Matt Zermes leading them to green in that number 14 car. Thortulo tucking in to try and get the draft. They're possibly going to be side by side. They are side by side, heading their way into the Andretti hairpin. The first time by, some drivers shuffling for position already. Smoke coming up in the air, both from downshifts and also from lockups. All these drivers shuffling to try and find their way around each other. It's really important in these races to make the positions while you can. Make hay while the sun is shining. Zerbes was able to hold off the challenge from Tulo. Those two drivers are running P1 and P2. Meanwhile, Jesus Rodriguez has managed to make up 2 spots. Got a move done on Jim Brewster and Parvinder Lador to actually move his way up into 4th. Very nicely played from Jesus Rodriguez behind the wheel of that 76 car to be one of our hard chargers early on. And speaking of a hard charger, a little bit farther up the road from this man, Matthias Marin, is actually more human right in front, who's managed to make up 5 spots so far in this race. Incredibly impressive from the South African.
It is. And another thing we have to mention, you see the smoke coming out from the back of these vehicles banging through the gears, and that's one thing that you've got to be careful of here as well, especially these opening laps when you're pushing as hard as you can. You can do what's called a money shift in these vehicles very, very easily. Go down one too many gears, and these engines will not let you see another corner.
They will pop. They will explode like a balloon in the vacuum of space. That was probably the worst analogy I could ever use for something like that, but never mind. Let's talk about the drivers running up at the front, and let's also talk about the ones running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well. I think he got ran into. I'm not sure who that was that he made contact with, possibly Hank Mell. I'm not too sure. At first, I thought it was Andrew Love because it looked like a very similar looking race car to the one that Andrew Love usually runs in this series. However, it wasn't him, and here is a replay to see what happened to Parvinder Ladar. Heading his way around the final corner, carried a bit too much speed, loses it on the curb, and loops it around the corner. Meanwhile, Hank Mell, I think he may be coming in here a bit too late, and we're going to see him. Oh, actually, it was farther up the road. I think that may have been, was that Jeff Jacobson, I think, that made contact with him. Hank Mell, thankfully for his sakes, he got away with that with not even paint chip on that Formula V race car. Looking through it, okay, there's Jeff Jacobson. Oh my god, they're 4 wide hang through turn number 1. I saw Justice, and I think it was Justice, Mel, Jacobson, and Lynn involved in that 4 wide action. Hang through turn number 1. Here is another angle of it. Jacobson, one of the first cars to arrive on the scene, and oh, that was a big contact. I think I was looking at that. Was that the... Oh no, I may have pulled off a commentator's jinx. That may have been Morn Human or Marin, possibly.
It was Morn Human.
Oh no. Oh, the worst commentator's jinx I've ever pulled off here on slow motion.
Well, that's okay. It's probably not going to, it's not your first, it probably won't be your last if it's your first, but we've got a battle back up here at the front of the grid here, Ron. And it is a good one. Looks like Tulo going to try to show his nose down to the inside of turn 11. Just going to hold station for now, but he is putting the pressure on Zerbes.
Well, at this point in time, though, Tulo can't really push the issue too much because if he gets a bad run coming out of one of these corners, he'll be a sitting duck in reference to Degassis, who just set the fastest lap of the race. But now Zerbez and Tulo going side by side, heading into turn number 2. Gonna be a battle last late breakers with Tulo on the outside, Zerbez on the inside. None of these drivers want to make contact because that would be disastrous at this stage of the race. And Tulo now switching to the inside line, heading into turn at number 3 with Brewster trying to get a move done on Rodriguez here in the not too distant future. But look at Tulo getting the move done over Matt Zerbez to take the lead of this race. And look at Degassis last time by, he set the fastest lap of the race at a 1:41.843, similar to the pace that he set in the qualifying session earlier. And that's the thing with these Formula V's. I've covered series in which the qualifying times are way quicker than they ever would be in the race, but here in the Formula V, some of these drivers, especially with the draft and the solo qualifying session that these drivers had to deal with, they can set in cookers of lap times in the race compared to qualifying.
They absolutely can. This top 5 still staying very close, so even with all the battling, which is very impressive, you know that Marzucci is just begging them to fight even more, but Marzucci in a battle of himself with David Fitzgerald, and watch out because Michelle Lynn in S2 is right behind him. This is not what David needs.
Oh, not at all. That is going to be a hornet's nest of Formula V race cars between now and even the midway point of this race. Coming up to 5 minutes right about now, so 5 minutes into this 30-minute long race. Not a whole lot of time left. It's a little bit shorter than the other Weekend Warrior series here on Slow Motion. Those are usually 40-minute long races with pit stops thrown in as well. Here, don't have to worry about pit stops. Don't have to worry about strategy. It is just 30 minutes of pushing your race car to the absolute limit. And right now, Michelle Lynn is doing that, nearly running herself into the pit wall, trying to get a move done on... Ooh, that's some close stuff there. Heading into turn number 1 involving Fitzgerald, and I believe that's Fitzgerald and Jacobson were briefly going side by side, but Michelle Lynn got the move done in fairly textbook fashion, going down that start-finish straightaway under the bridge over that start-finish straightaway, got the move done. So Michelle Lynn slotting her way up the running order, as I think we have a driver already coming down pit lane. Who is that that's decided to make a call to come down the pits? That's Grider.
That is Jason Grider. I don't know if he's just decided to park it. He comes in, goes right back out again.
Maybe he's picked up some sort of damage in some of the stuff that happened at the start. Actually looking at the car, I wouldn't be too shocked if the incident that we saw with Ladar ended up being Grider involved in that. But right now, the fight at the front of the field continues to heat up. It was a 2-car fight. It then turned into a 3-car fight. It's a 5-car fight now. You've got Zerbez, Tulo, Degassis, Rodriguez, and Brewster all involved.
Oh,
3
my
wide,
goodness.
coming out of the corkscrew down their way into turn number 9. It's Tulo in the lead, Degassis in P2, Rodriguez in 3rd, Brewster in 4th, and Zerbez dropping his way down to P5. It shows you how quickly things could change in these Formula V races, because he had grabbed the pole in pretty convincing fashion, was the fastest by what, about 0.3 of a second, led for a decent chunk of the opening part of this race. However, now he's dropped down to 5th, and probably by the time they come around to start lap 7 in the not too distant future, actually, well, it'd be lap 6 next time by, I wouldn't be too shocked if we see Zerbez back in the lead.
I wouldn't either, but look out for Dan Skaczynski. Right now, he's trying to make the move on Don Parsons. Looks like he might be able to not get this going around the outside. Gonna just hold station again. These drivers are, again, running only in a 30-minute race, so they have to get the moves done as quick as they can. Back to Michelle Lynn, leader of the S2 class, holding station right now behind Guido Marzucci. Back at the front, though, speaking of a hornet's nest, it has calmed down just a little bit, but Tulo starting to pull a gap on these drivers. Look at the amount of smoke coming out as he downshifts and gets off the throttle going through turn number 5. So it's going to be very, very interesting here until to the end. Can Tulo, do you think, get this gap spread out enough to get out of the draft?
You know, that is a very good question, and I was asking something very similar to that the last time the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series was here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, when we saw Megan Overstreet, who ended up winning that race in dominating fashion, broke away from the draft and was just able to completely check out from this race. But I think at this track, you can't really do that too well compared to a track like Summit Point, where outside of that long start-finish straightaway, which is just incredibly disproportionately long compared to the rest of the circuit, like Laguna Seca is a little bit different. You don't have just one long straightaway and then the rest of the track is made up entirely of corners. You got that start-finish straightaway, the flat-out blast, which isn't really straight at all. But then outside that, you've got the right haul straightaway leading up to the corkscrew. You've got some long flat-out blasts, mainly between turns 4 and 5. So you'd have to do a whole lot and hope for some miracles to try and break out of the draft. Megan Overstreet trying to do it. Michelle Lynn trying to do it right now. Got the girl races confused with Michelle maybe trying to go for a move into turn number 2. The Andretti hairpin close but no cigar, trying to get the move done on Marzucci to make up another spot. And touching back on the storyline surrounding some of the the heavy hitters in this race are up in the front, but some of the highest position gainers are all throughout the field. Michelle Lynn is one of them, who just did some rally action in sympathy with Marzucci, who ran wide coming out of turn number 3 this time by. Now they're going to be side by side yet again heading into turn number 5. I don't think Michelle is going to try and risk it for the biscuit and get that move done heading into the corner, but Michelle up 4 spots where she started in this race. Gary Wobold running behind in P10. He is up 5, and you could also see the likes of Tulo and Buttermore. They're both up 7, so some of these drivers getting helped by the chaos we've seen all throughout this race thus far. However, lots of drivers putting in some very honorable results thus far.
Michelle Lynn has gotten the move done. It looks like they are side by side through the corkscrew right now between Michelle Lynn, Guido Marzucci. Guido able to hold on, but Michelle still on the inside now, going through turn 9, about to go through turn 10, still side by side into 10. Are they going to keep this up? Michelle trying to go the over-under, has to fall back in line. Some staunch defense by Guido Marzucci.
Michelle Lynn is not very happy. Well, I mean, she's not frustrated. However, she is desperate to try and get the move done on Marzucci. Marzucci driving for Ford Racing, as it's labeled on their small little graphics here with the SDK gaming software. Marzucci driving for Ford Racing. That could explain why Michelle Lynn wants to no longer be behind him right now. Trying to get the move done, heading into turn number 1 to finally clear him. Jacobson also getting in the mix as well. Jeff Jacobson getting that move done to slot his way up into P7, up 2 spots from where he started. Marzucci now down 1. Michelle at this stage, though, very, very fast. However, in all of that battling, our field up towards the top 10 has really broken into 2 or possibly even 3 groups. Jim Brewster is the rear gunner of the first one. He's running in P5. Right in front of him is Zerbez, who's not very far off of Jesus Rodriguez, who occupies that final podium position. DeGassis and Tulo still running in P1 and P2 respectively. But then right behind them, it's about 9 seconds to Michelle Lynn in P6. And you can see it's a hornet's nest right behind her because she's got Jacobson, Marzucci, and Fitzgerald all looking to pick up the pieces if she makes some small little mistake.
Yep, and you can see Michelle definitely getting a bit defensive there on the inside line. Michelle knows that if she can do it, Jacobson can do it too. Oh my goodness, as she gets a little bit sideways, holds onto it. Great car control from Michelle Lynn. Actually able to gain a little bit of time there. Jacobson thinks about a move to the inside. Not a spot you want to do it, but Jacobson's going to get a run here. Michelle gets back to the outside and back up at the front. We have another battle as well. We've got 2 battles to cover here, Ron, so you're going to have to help me out just a little bit.
Alrighty, I feel bad for you. You gotta be like a chameleon looking at about 14 different things at once, side by side with Marzucci and Jacobson heading through the final corner. Marzucci is going to get that move done to slot his way back into P7, but up at the front it is pandemonium. You can see Thortulo and DeGas is still running in P2. Zerba is trying to get the move done on Jesus Rodriguez and gets it done successfully, heading through the Andretti hairpin of turn 2, but at this point in time, DeGassis, who still holds the fastest lap of the race at that 141.482. He's fast. He has a very fast number 4 Formula Vee at his disposal. I think he's also feeling a little bit impatient behind Thortulo at this stage. We're coming up to the halfway mark and a little under, going up to about 3 minutes time, Adam. So I'm curious if these drivers are starting to get a bit more impatient. We also have some lap traffic a little bit farther up the road. That could play a huge role in this fight
dangerous
as well.
move.
As Zerbez gets the move done into 6. Well done, Matt Zerbez.
Yeah, look what that's done to Jesus Rodriguez. Now about to lose the position to Alan DeGassis as well. Oh my goodness, Brewster about to fall all the way back because of that move, holding it on the inside through the corkscrew. Still side by side. It looks like Brewster is not going to be able to get the move done on Alan, but Alan lost 3 positions there because of that move into turn 6. Wonderful move by Zerbez.
That was beautiful. As you said, as it was happening, it was risky. It was a ballsy move from Zerbez to try and get it done through turn 6. That turn is tricky enough single file, let alone side by side. I think, could we possibly find a replay of that? I will ride on board with Zerbez. Actually, we may want to hold off on that, as it looks like Zerbez is closing up to Tulo right in front. They may be bump drafting, or we may see him go side by side heading into the Andretti hairpin. Zerbez looking on that outside line. We could see a switchback attempted between those two. It looks like Tulo is going to close off that opportunity for Zerbez to try and retake the lead of this race. Zerbez, he has been up and down. It's been a roller coaster ride for him thus far. Started the race from the pole, briefly dropped down to P2, then shot back up to P1, ran there for a decent chunk of the race, and then he got his way back up into the front pack fight. You can see a very dirty visor from him. The fact he has that dirty of a visor and was still able to pull off a move like this really speaks volumes about the driver that Matt Zerbez is. But riding on board, it was a matter of inches between himself and that red curb of doom on the inside of turn 6. If he hit that, I won't be too shocked if we finally saw the Formula Vee ballpark session that we were probably expecting heading into this race.
I think we may still see a Formula Vee ballpark session, Ron. These drivers are no holds barred right now. Gloves slowly coming off. I think off of one hand at least the glove has been off. They're trying to yank it off of the other hand right now, getting more and more aggressive, but still racing very, very clean, very impressive by all of these drivers. Michelle Lynn and Guido Marzucci go back and forth again through the corkscrew. I mean, these drivers have not left each other an inch.
At this point, they have completely given up any sort of hope of catching up to the top 5. They are still battling hard, and that gap between Michelle Lynn and Jim Brewster and can definitely testify for that. They were about, 8 seconds apart not very long ago. Now it's 12.2 between Lynn and Brewster running in P6 and P5 respectively. But Michelle putting on a very good show, up 5 spots from where she started this race, as I believe Zerbez and Tulo are starting to go side by side at the north end of the field. Zerbez trying to do everything he can to take the lead of the race, but it's not going to work out for him. You can see he's still running in P2, and look at that a little bit farther up the road. That, I believe, is Marin. Yeah, you can see Matthias Marin, the Canadian in the number 15 car. He is going to act as a pick in this fight. I gotta wonder how these drivers are going to go about that. When are they going to catch up to this car of Marin? They're pretty much in his slipstream now. So you can see that gap diminish. In these Formula V's, yeah, it's pretty much like a vacuum attached to the back of these Formula Vee race cars, and Marin, I think, is going to play the sportsman role and back at it and let all of them by in that small little flat-out place between 5 and 6. Good sportsmanship role from him there. However, it's given Zerbez the opportunity to get a move done on Tulo. They're going to be side-by-side going up the right haul straightaway, careening their way into the corkscrew now. Will Zerbez be able to get the move done on the outside? Switches the inside midway through the corkscrew. Yes, he does, and now Tulo feeling under pressure from Rodriguez right behind. They're side by side on corner exits. They have single filed out, heading their way through rainy curve of turn 9. Meanwhile, right behind the Lynn, Jacobson, Marzucci, and Fitzgerald fight is still very close. All these cars covered by about a second. It is a hornet's nest of Formula Vee race cars, and Jacobson gets a move done on Lynn to slot his way up into 6th and displace Lynn going back to 7th. All these drivers are starting to battle hard. We're over that halfway mark, Adam. So I think at this point in time, these drivers are starting to risk it for the biscuit and maybe trial a move they could try and use towards the end of this race. Tulo, he wants to take that lead back. He enjoyed it while he was there. However, he still wants it back. He's like, you know what? I like having a bunch of cars behind me and none of them in front of me. I want to get back in the lead. And that's what he's trying to do right now, as Zerbez is trying to do everything in his power to hold off Tulo. In terms of their best lap of the race, the graphic that we have up right now, Tulo, despite the fact that he's about a half a second slower in terms of best lap of the race compared to Mark Zerbez, I mean, you can still see they're pretty evenly matched, and that just shows you how powerful the slipstream is in these Formula Vee race cars.
It is extremely powerful, and the further back you get, a.k.a. Jim Brewster, just hanging out back there right now, loving life, sitting behind, and maybe a little bit of fuel conservation as well. You wonder if some of these drivers may be doing this because they underfueled the car just a little bit. I know that can happen, but that doesn't matter right now. It doesn't look like Tulo's underfueled his car because he's going for a move into the corkscrew, and it looked like Rodriguez was trying to get a little fancy on that one as well. And there's a spin.
Oh, contact. Oh, that was contact between Jesus Rodriguez and Alan DeGassis had spent Jesus Rodriguez around and spun him around, I should say. His tires are definitely spent, and he is spent entirely out of that fight as he's now dropped down about 2.8 seconds away from Jim Brewster, who now inherits P4. And here is the replay. Rodriguez overcooked it a teeny tiny bit. Originally, I was expecting that contact to happen between Tulo and Zerbez. They were very close. You can see a matter of inches separating them. Jesus Rodriguez tried to check up. All three of those cars got involved, and we nearly saw Jesus Rodriguez end up tumbling on his lid down the corkscrew. There's a whole lot of stuff going on, but I think I'll try and break it down as much as I can once this battle cools off between Zerbez and Tulo. And we were talking before the start of this broadcast, Adam, about some drivers running into some difficulties heading through the corkscrew, and we just saw that happen right there.
That was almost a carbon copy of what I saw happen. In practice, it just a little bit of misjudgment on corner entry. Again, it was nobody's fault, I don't think. I mean, it's just good hard racing. Jesus Rodriguez trying to maybe look to spot his breaking point as Zerbez and Tulo were fighting, and there was just absolutely nothing DeGassis could do. His car seems to be okay, which is impressive considering the contact that they had. But it looks like now that he has lost that draft. Now the question is, are these guys going to fight, or can they now see that they have 10 minutes left in the race? They're going to work together a little bit. Nope, just kidding. You can see Tulo going for the move.
Yeah, they don't want to rest. They are here to have some fun, and have some fun they are, as we are in the broadcast booth. Tulo, Zerbez side by side, heading through the corkscrew. Zerbez still going to hold off the challenge from Tulo behind. These two at this stage, as you just pointed out, as Michelle Lynn has also had a moment, she was running as high up as P6, and she's gone off the circuit, was involved in that hornet's nest of Formula V's, and I think she's been caught out by an incident. Here's a look at it. I think that's Marzucci right behind Michelle Lynn in that 440 car, heading her way into the first turn, and it's a simple self-spin. Oh, she is going to be kicking herself over that mistake heading through the Andretti hairpin. It's a real challenging corner, especially in these Formula V's. As I said earlier, these drivers want to carry the momentum as much as they can, and Tulo's trying to use that momentum to get a move done on Zerbez. Side by side, Tulo on the outside, Zerbez on the inside. Zerbez going to hold off the challenge for now, though they are going side by side again. This time, Tulo trying to get that switchback. He's going to be stuck on that outside line, though, and Zerbez aggressively closing that door. He's like, nope. Don't want any parts of that, and I can't necessarily blame him. He's like, hey, we saw what happened when those drivers were going side by side all throughout the field. We don't want that to happen, so let's just remain calm. We still got 9 minutes left to go in this race. To tick under that now, as we've got 21 minutes and 15 seconds on that 30-minute long clock. Zerbez and Tulo maybe playing it a little bit patient. I think the main reason why they're playing it patient, though, Adam, is because still, even though we're over 21 minutes into this race, Alan DeGassis has that fastest lap of the race, and even though he isn't in the draft of these two drivers, he hasn't really lost touch with them either, still teetering around that 2.5 second barrier. The gap between these two and him is side by side yet again, heading into the corkscrew. Zerbez still going to hold on to the lead for now. However, he hit the grass there a little bit, hit the gravel, I should say. That's going to compromise his exit coming out of the corkscrew, and they're going to be side by side yet again coming out of turn 9. Zerbez clears him yet again. I think briefly before this action heats up once again, wrapping the small little bow in the storyline, I was going to say, DeGassis has a fast race car. He is not losing touch with these two. If anything, in the past like 30 seconds, he's closed up that gap by about a half a second. So DeGassis is still in this. He's not out of it. He's out of the draft, granted. However, he's still got a fast race car behind him, and if those two have a small little bit of a moment, we could see DeGassis close right up and try and get a move done to take the lead of this race and possibly even the win. Coming to the end of the race, Adam, tensions are going to get high, and the drivers are going to push it more and more.
Well, they are. I mean, and you watch every time DeGassis and Zerbez start to battle, or sorry, Tulo and Zerbez start to battle, DeGassis closes that gap. It's now down to 2.2. They do gain a little bit on the straightaways just because of the drafting that they're doing, but it does come back down in just waiting for a move from Tulo, especially into turn 6. It will kill momentum. Tulo not going to try to do it yet. He might not try to do it into turn 6, but through the corkscrew, every lap is where they lose about 0.5 of a second. If DeGassis can get that gap back down between 1.5 and 1 seconds, DeGassis is in this fight. So just keep an eye on that. We'll see what happens now. Tulo probably going to try try to go to the outside again. Is he going to? No, Tulo going to stay right behind him now, bump drafting. I think he can see that DeGassis is starting to close that gap. Tulo now just sitting behind, does not want DeGassis to become part of this battle because then Tulo is looking behind him and in front of him, Ron.
Yeah, he wants to try and wait for the last possible opportunity, and granted, from the experience I've had racing in real life, I always enjoyed being the last driver to run that day. I always wanted to have the last word, have the last say in how the race went, and I think that's what Thor Tulo's doing right now. He's allowing Zerbez to run at the front, maybe use a little bit more fuel than Tulo is. He's just going to be like, hey, at this point, I'm going to let you enjoy the lead. However, coming to take that checkered flag, I'm going to pull off a move that you did not see coming. They're evenly matched pace-wise, too. You can see both of them at a 141.9, and side by side, yet again, heading into the Andretti hairpin. It looks like Zerbez is going to hold off the challenge yet again. I gotta say, both of these drivers, Tulo, incredibly resilient in this race. He has been matching Zerbez punch for punch, move for move, word for word. It has been a great show from both of these cars, and granted to Zerbez as well, credit where credit's due to him. He has been putting on a defensive masterclass, trying to hold off Tulo, who's like a small little tornado right behind him, trying to pick up the pieces and get a move done. Tulo once again backing out of it. It looked like he had a good enough run heading into 5 this time by, but I think he backed out of it, and I can't necessarily blame him. This is a heads-up fight between these two. The next farthest car up the road is Ladar. However, I don't think, as Ladar is going through the corkscrew right now, I don't think he's going to play a role in this finish with about 5 minutes left to go on the clock. Barely any time left in this race as Tulo sticking it around the outside, heading through the corkscrew. Is it going to stick this time, or is Zerbez going to hold on to the lead? Tulo, he's going to be able to clear him coming out of the corkscrew, and Thor Tulo back at the front.
He is, and you know what Tulo is reminding me of right now, if I'm Matt Zerbez, is that, when you're outside late at night, or not late at night, but later at night, and there's that mosquito that just keeps buzzing around your ear, and you can't get rid of it. It's getting very annoying. That's what Tulo has done to Zerbez right now, is just kept the pressure on. Zerbez doesn't know where he is, doesn't know where he's going to go. Tulo able to get the move in. StarJar24, thank you so much for watching the stream right now. Yes, if you've just been here for a minute, you've missed quite a bit of action. This 2-car battle was 5, but a minor mistake into the corkscrew has changed that just a little bit, but it doesn't matter because now we got Zerbez trying to go back around the outside. Don't look now because Gary Woolbolt as well getting close to David Fitzgerald. We might get a move there, but back up at the front, Tulo still holding on, and now Tulo is in that position that Zerbez was just in. Now it's Zerbez chasing Tulo down, and now Zerbez is that annoying mosquito in Tulo's ear.
Yeah, one person was a chaser, the other was a chasee. Now it's completely flipped coming to the end of this race. I'm honestly shocked that Tulo went for the move. I mean, granted, he has the pace to lead this race, as we've seen throughout the entirety of it. Both of these drivers have really deserved to fight for the win when everything is said and done. However, I'm kind of shocked that Tulo went for the move when he did. I was expecting him to kind of hold off for the final 2 laps of the race, then really go for it. But we're coming to that soon, looking at the time we have left in this race, coming up to about 3.5 minutes. These drivers feeling more pressure as Zerbez looking to put the move on Tulo that Tulo put on him. Around the outside, that's going to end in tears as Zerbez goes for a spin. Zerbez spins around trying to get a move done on Thor Tulo to take the lead of the race, and the one mistake he makes all afternoon, the driver that had the fastest lap time of the practice session grabbed the pole for this race and led for a vast majority of it, has spun around, and now he's going to have to fight like hell to even finish on the podium. Heartbreaker from Matt Zerbez. Absolute
heartbreaker. It looks like that corkscrew, again, it's just the way that the corkscrew comes at you. Coming into it, turn 7, it's a blind corner. It comes up and over a crest. You lose all of the downforce, which these cars don't have any, but the pressure on the tires. You come up over the hill. Rear tires can lock up so easily there, and it sends Zerbez around as he's trying to go for the move, maybe just a little hard on the brakes while turning. He does get back around Brewster for the podium position, but that is going to be not a very good consolation prize considering he was going for the win. Thor Tulo now out in clean air, waving that checkered flag now in his head. Just got to hold it together for 3 more laps. Don't look, though. Alan DeGassis, Tulo cannot get too complacent because DeGassis is not slow. With that being said, though, we do have David Fitzgerald leading the S2 class, but Gary Woolbolt, speaking of annoying mosquitoes, is not letting David go that well, we may have a fight here for the S2 winner.
I think we very much will. Those two drivers covered by about 0.3 of a second now, as a fight is continuing on between Marzucci and Rodriguez. A little bit further up the road, man, my voice is giving out. I think I need a little bit of water during this broadcast. But right now, we've got battles all up and down the field, and here is that fight. Despite the fact that Michelle Lynn spun out of this fight earlier on in the race, we've still got a nice trio of Jacobsen, Marzucci, and Jesus Rodriguez acting as a rear gunner. Jesus Rodriguez has not had a calm moment all throughout this entire race. He was involved in that battle for the podium positions and the win when that top 5 pack was really a top 5 pack. However, he spun out of that, got involved in an incident between himself, Brewster, and I believe the other driver involved was... I'm trying to think of who the driver was.
Human.
Can't really remember. This race has been so hectic at this point that it's just so tough to try and keep our eyes on it. It was actually DeGassis, my apologies. DeGassis was the car that ended up getting hit in that Jesus Rodriguez and Jim Brewster. Schmalzel Brewster, unfortunate victim there. He ended up just getting caught in the midst of that. Really had nowhere to go. At this point, these drivers have nowhere else to hide. You can see waving in the air is that white flag. It's going to be one more lap to go here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors week number 7 at Laguna Seca. And while Thor Tulo is continuing to pull away from Alan DeGassis, this fight for the win in Spec 2 is going to be hot. Fitzgerald trying to do everything he can to hold off a challenge from Gary Wohlbold. I've commentated races with Gary Wohlbold in the past. He is a fast driver. That 902 car is not a slouch. He is not a slouch at all. And you can see lap times wise, they're fairly evenly matched. Fitzgerald at a 42.8, Wohlbold meanwhile at a 42.7. So in terms of lap time, they are fairly evenly matched. Wohlbold up 6 spots, very nicely played from the driver of the 902 car, reporting and representing from Ohio. And we could see him maybe eye up a move in the not too distant future. There's not a whole lot of opportunities left for him though. I'm curious if he is going to go for a move. I don't think he has the run coming onto the Rahal straightaway for the final time. Take a look up and down the field. I don't think it's going to be a fight between Zerbez and Brewster for that final podium position. I think those two are going to remain line astern. Thortulo, I believe, is about to take the checkered flag here to win. There you go, Thortulo. There's a checkered flag for him. He wins it at Laguna Seca in a very dramatic and hard-fought afternoon from him. Gary Wohlbold, meanwhile, still holding on to that P9 spot. Not close enough to get the move done on David Fitzgerald, rounding his way around the final corner for the final time. And it looks like those two are going to end line astern. Fitzgerald in P8, Wohlbold in P9, Michelle Lynn, the rear gunner and all of that. Tough luck for Michelle because she was putting together a very strong showing, was involved in that Jacobsen, Rodriguez, and Marzucci fight for a vast majority of this race. However, a simple little self-spin ends up taking her out of it. Daniel Straczynski is going to end up this race in P12. And although we didn't have the bean and banging and roughing each other up and fantastic battling that we were possibly expecting heading to the checkered flag for the win in this race between Tulo and Zerbez, that was still a very hard-fought race from the both of them. I think very entertaining as well. What do you think, Adam?
I would say that that was a very, very entertaining race, to say the least. So, yeah, it was great. We've got Starjar in here saying, driver of the day, I reckon, is Michelle. When I joined, you were talking about Michelle, so she is driver of the day. Michelle was on an absolute burner for quite a bit. Turn 1 issues, though, Starjar got her into a little bit of trouble, locked the rears, and went on around. Now looking at Jason Greider, who, again, that ghost pit stop right at the beginning kind of put him out, and I think what probably happened was the fuel thing that we were talking about. Maybe he didn't put enough fuel in the car, Ron, with Ladar, Inc. Melee, and now we're waiting for Matthias Marin, who is already done. We have some results, but Ron, yes, Jason Greider, terrible for him. Probably some fuel issues there.
Yeah, tough luck. These drivers in this series, the fuel is a big factor in these light, low-power race cars. They try and get as little fuel as they really need to make it to the checkered flag, and sometimes a small little miscalculation and an error in the math can do you no good, but I think we will get those results loaded up from an exciting race meeting here at Laguna Seca. Hard fought from start to finish, 30 minutes of racing action. I'll tell you what, all the people watching this broadcast, and mainly the people that have been talking a whole lot in the chat. I'm looking at you, StarJar24. You were in for a good one, so hopefully you enjoyed this one as we see the field now flooding their way back into pit lane. It's Thortulo taking the checkered flag over Alan Degassis in P2. Matt Zerbez is going to round out your podium in third. However, you gotta wonder if Zerbez is a little bit disappointed in how things worked out for him. May have had a shot to win it, led for a vast majority of the race. However, it ends in tears. Jim Brewster very close to him when everything was said and done. Well, that was the first voice crack I've had for this broadcast. Very interesting from Jim Brewster. He ends up in fourth. Jeff Jacobson going to round out your top five. Jesus Rodriguez gonna finish this race in P6. Guido Marzucci ending up in P7. He had a very hard-fought afternoon in the number 19 car. Then winning in Spec 2 is going to be David Fitzgerald. Gary Wolbald in P9. Michelle Lynn going to round out your top 10.
Yes, and 11th is going to be Don Parsons with Dan Stasinski coming home in 12th. Nick Tulo 13th with Brian Hansen and Wayne Buttermore rounding out your top 15. Jason Greider, again, weird pit stop by him. Parvinder with a bit of issues. We thought he was going to be fast, finished in 17th position, and 18th is going to be Hank Melee. Rounding out the rest of your 23 car grid is Morn Human, Joshua Justice, Spencer Boudouin, and JBC Istvan, who did not take to the field this afternoon. Trying to walk up and down the pit lane here, see if we can find any drivers to interview, but until that point, give us your thoughts on the race this afternoon, Ron.
Oh, it was absolutely incredible. Hard-fought show from all of these drivers. Everyone pushed it to the absolute limit. Laguna Seca, it's a track that a lot of these drivers are very well familiar with, and we just saw that put on full display. They were pushing it from start to finish, lights to flag. It was a very hard-fought afternoon for a lot of these drivers. Tough luck for some of the ones that got involved in some incidents. That is for darn sure. Michelle Lynn, I feel bad for her. She spun out of a very good result. I wonder how that's going to affect the Spec 2 championship, because she is in contention for that Spec 2 title. Didn't she? I think she entered this race in the lead of the Spec 2 standings. Was that correct?
She did, yeah. Looking at the championship standings now, 439 points for Michelle Lynn. And Gary Wolbolt was sitting at 426, but Gary did finish one position ahead of her here, so we will see how that shakes up for next weekend. Again, we will be back to you for next weekend's race in the Formula V's. With that being said, why don't we bring up some upcoming broadcasts? So tomorrow on July 28th, we are back here again for more Weekend Warriors content. The Formula Ford is going to be at Winton International, and then on Sunday again at 3:45, 2 hours later, we're going to be with the Weekend Warriors again for the Spec Racer Ford at the Daytona Road Course. Tune into both of those. Going to be great. On the call with me tomorrow is going to be Randall McGrew, and then we're not done yet here on SMB. Tomorrow night is going to be the Asphalt Street Stocks at Laguna Seca, which is what we just saw. Probably going to be a pretty interesting race, speaking of tire heat and vehicles that aren't really that well meant to go around road courses. Yours truly will be racing in that one. Tim Cox on the call tomorrow night. Then on Thursday, we are going to be covering SimCar. This is going to be their third race of the season. They're going to be at Imola in the GT3s. Tune into that one. We had a 36 car grid last week. Always great action. And then next Saturday, we will be back again with the Formula V's at Brands Hatch. Tim Cox and Ronnie, you're going to be on that call as well.
Oh, Brands Hatch, that is a classic. There's been some other the Formula Ford Weekend Warrior Series ran there last season. They actually ran there very early on this season with a broadcaster that we will not mention because it's basically the boogeyman when it comes to this series. And that was a very good race. I was very lucky to be a part of that broadcast. And let me tell you, that was action-packed. We'll have to see. I don't believe rain will play a factor in that race. We'll just have to wait and see. Hey, it gives people more of a reason to subscribe here to Slow Motion Broadcasting and hit that notification bell as well, so you never miss some of these upcoming broadcasts and the action we have pretty much every single week. Brands Hatch is going to be a good one. Me and Tim on that call. That's going to be a good one, Adam. Hopefully, sadly, you won't be here for that broadcast. Hopefully, you can tune in for that. That's going to be as exciting, if not even more of an action-packed race as we saw at Laguna Seca here today. So some really good stuff to look forward to in 1 week's time on August the 3rd.
I cannot wait. And guys, make sure to tune in tomorrow if you want more action-packed action. That was a very weird thing for me to say. But until then, guys, Starjar, Vardenfall, Outlander, thank you so much for chatting with us. Tune in tomorrow. Watch all the races if you guys aren't doing anything. All the racing is going to be good tomorrow, next week, and into next week. And guys, have a great rest of your Saturday. Hope you all stay safe. Hope you all are safe. Have a good day.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was
our
the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need
Yes.
the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new
Conspiracy
content.
confirmed.
But
Yes.
but